enjoy a seat at the table and good company, where great conversations and meaningful discussions happen.
Welcome to And Good Company. I'm Sara, a conversationalist. We all know a great dinner party isn't really about the food. It's about the people seated around the table engaging in lively discussions. We wanted to create a way to capture those smart and important conversations as they happen. I am pleased to be in the company of Steve Corona, the Executive Director of Latinos Count and a Vice President of the Fort Wayne Community School Board. Welcome.
Thank you.
So
what is this business about food isn't important?
Well, no, I joke that the interview is that, it's like you and I having dinner, but we just don't have any food here.
But I love food.
Well, okay, so when you come back, I'll bring you some. I didn't think people would want to watch us chew.
No, they would not.
Yeah.
No, that would not be nice.
You have a tendency, Mr. Corona, to downplay your contributions to the community. So let's talk about how you personally have broken several barriers. The first of which was you were the first Hispanic TV newscaster. Is that correct?
If you say so.
Okay. You're the first Hispanic member of the Fort Wayne Community School Board, and you actually, this is your 39th consecutive year.
Started the 40th, July 1st, 2020.
It's unbelievable. And you're a member of the Fort Wayne's Redevelopment Commission. You're a member of the Board of Trustees at the University of St. Francis. And you bought in 2017, you're the owner of La Tour de Fort, which I like your Pedaling for Good is the company. You do 2 annual pub crawls for supporting disabled American veterans.
Right.
You're also a very big bike enthusiast yourself, because I heard you have 2 bikes. You have a road bike and a hybrid. And in your basement, you have your own spinning bike.
I do.
So you've been spinning before even, aren't you upset that you didn't develop the Peloton?
That is a machine, boy. And it's expensive, but I can't afford one of those machines.
Right.
I was on the road this morning. I did. What did I do? Almost 25 miles this morning, and I would have gone longer, but I thought it was going to rain, so I cut the ride short.
But so even you combined a passion with a cause with Tour de Fort, and you work with your son on that, right?
My son Vince, right?
Yeah, and then you also served almost 30 years as the president and CEO of JobWorks.
Correct.
Which was a nonprofit training organization.
Yep.
Now you did run for city council for the at-large race, and you lost. But I'm curious to know, what did you learn about running, and why do you think it's important for people to run for office?
Well, with respect to the city council race, I was asked by the mayor to run, and I said sure. And even though 2019 was a busy year for me, I did. I probably could have spent more time on it, but I didn't. It was an interesting experience for me because I always saw myself in this race as an underdog, and really had not been involved in the city side of politics, the governmental side of politics. And it's important stuff. I mean, this city has been through some amazing changes, growth,
right,
and that's been exciting. And yet at the same time, there have been, as there always are in any issue, 2 sides.
Right.
But the prevailing side has been that what we're doing in bringing new business to downtown is good. We're offering lots of incentives. The mayor has created this public-private partnership, which to me makes a hell of a lot of sense, but to some folks, they don't buy into that.
Right.
They somehow see that growth should be something exclusively undertaken by the private sector. And yet, if you would take a look at those cities that have done well, there's always been a public-private
Well, there has to
partnership and
be.
investment. But so, you know, I got into that. I did a lot of speaking to neighborhood groups, and I mean, I've always had thoughts about how cities should operate. And it always begins with neighbors and people that come together for a common cause.
Right.
To create something better than they.
Sure. And there is no representative of the Hispanic or Latino community on the city council.
No, there isn't.
So do you think you'll maybe run again?
No.
No. That was it. That was your one shot.
It was a favor to the mayor. I wanted to be a part of his team moving forward. The Democrats did very well. They picked up a couple of seats on council.
Right.
And even more impressive was the fact that the 2 of the 3 at-large positions were won by black folks, black people, which I think signifies something greater than just the election, something more about what this city is about, in that it is able and willing to move forward to black people at-large representatives on its city council.
And so you've also been married for 40 years. So
it will be. I better get this right, man. It's 43 years, September 10th.
Okay, so what's the secret for a successful marriage?
I think you give each other a lot of space, and you know, we may not agree on things from time to time, but you know, you just let it pass. I mean, I you know, deeper than the marriage, I think it's a philosophy about life, in that how many things are really important?
Right.
How many real things are important? What, you're going to fight over everything?
Right. I always say you have to pick your battles.
You got to pick your battles.
But I think at the end of the day, you have to decide how important things are.
You know, and I'll tell you, part of my philosophy in that is grounded in 2 early experiences that I had with losing a sister and a brother. And to me, that's the worst thing. Death is the worst thing.
Right.
Everything else, you know.
Right. We can deal with.
You can deal with it.
But you did recognize and want to do something important because you started Latinos Count.
Yeah.
So it's a nonprofit organization that prepares Hispanic and Latino youth for global or opportunities for their futures, right? Yeah. So why do you believe that an investment in a Latino student is an investment in Northeast Indiana?
Well, for several reasons. One is the region has had this goal, and the region and its leaders have had this goal of trying to have 60% of its adults with a college degree or a industry recognized certification, because the belief is, and I believe it to be true, that if you have a skilled workforce, you're going to get good paying jobs to the region. The region has not been able to move the needle much closer to that 60 percentile. I mean, I think it's still struggling around 40%, and the needle hasn't moved much over 6 or 7 years.
Because they said 2020 was back, you know, they said 2020 was the year that this was supposed to happen.
Yeah, I think it's now 2025 or something, right? They keep pushing out the year of full attainment.
Okay.
To me, my argument is, because you got to sell your position, right? To me, my argument is, and I think it's a good one, you're not going to get there without including Latinos.
Well, absolutely, because here are the stats. So in Fort Wayne in 2019, 73.8 are white, 14.9 are black and African American, 8.9% are Hispanics and Latino. However, what's interesting is currently Latinos and Hispanics, it's the fastest growing minority population in the country. And right now it's 16% of the US population. But by 2050, so you're talking in 30 years, it's going to be an estimate of 30% of the population. And just in terms of Indiana, so Indiana has 489,353 Hispanics, about 7.3% of the state's population. But in 1 year, from 2018 to 2019, it went from 6.7% to 7.3%.
And I can tell you locally that our student population within Fort Wayne Community Schools has almost doubled.
Right.
10 years ago it was 10%. This year it's 19%. And I can tell you that the schools that we are going to be renovating are the neighborhoods where the Burmese and Latino population are coming back. They're older homes east of Lafayette along Pettit. I was just in the neighborhood and those schools a couple of weeks ago. And those are the schools where we have trailers outside of the schools because the population, largely Latino and Burmese, are populating those neighborhoods
Well,
again.
because also 1 in 4 elementary school age children is Latino or Hispanic.
Right.
So, I mean, it's the fastest growing segment. So, I mean, but there is absolutely this issue for Latinos and Hispanics about continuing education and going for a post-secondary degree.
Right.
We'll talk first, let's just talk about that, and then we'll also deal with the issues of the high school.
All right.
How, part of Latinos Count is your goal is to help prepare them to attend college or to get training. So how do you do that? How do you help them?
Well, several ways. And our initial focus has been with high school students, but I can tell you that we're now looking at expanding our services to include elementary school students and to also begin dealing with college upperclassmen as they begin to look around for internships and jobs. But back to our original focus with Latino youth, and it's not for the most part exclusively Latino because some of the programs that we've been doing have also included Burmese and blacks.
Okay.
But our signature program in helping Latino high school students figure out what's out there is a program we've been doing called College and Career Pathways. And it's interesting because we made the same mistake that everybody else was making 5 years ago in that the program focused only on college. And after 2 years, we realized what a big mistake because most of the kids, I shouldn't say most of the kids, not all of the kids are focused on school.
Right, they're not academically focused.
Or they don't have the money, or
Right.
they're not ready.
Right.
And I saw that even more so with Latino youth. And so we widened the conference to take a look at what I called exit strategies. What is your exit strategy from high school? If you don't have one, we need to begin thinking about one because what I was told, and I believe it to be true, the folks at Ivy Tech said, we graduate about 4,000 kids every year from Allen County high schools. About 1,700 of them have no idea what they're going to do. We're done. No, you're not done.
Right.
What the hell are you going to do?
Right.
Well, they don't know. So we began taking a look at 4 pathways that we thought might be might be of interest to you. So we talked about high school to college,
Okay.
either 2-year or 4-year.
Right.
We talked about high school to skilled trades. We talked about high school to work. There are great employers here who will hire you with a high school diploma, will offer tuition reimbursement. So as you begin to, take a look around at the jobs, let's say at Parkview or IU Health or Lutheran, you're saying, wow, that guy, that young woman over there is making, a lot of money, being an X-ray technician. How do I do that?
Right.
Well, we have this tuition reimbursement program.
Right.
So
and you also work with Cuesta Foundation,
Right.
which helps them to give them a tuition and grants.
So that's the third pathway, and then the final one is military enlistment.
Right.
And it's a good pathway, especially if you believe that I'm not mature enough to go to college. I'm not wealthy enough to go to college. I'm just not ready to go to college.
Or I don't know what I want to study.
And you know what? I need to grow up. I mean, there is at least that acknowledgement that I need to get mature.
Right.
And I think that the Army, the Navy, the Marines may help me. And so, unlike unlike some schools who don't invite recruiters into their buildings, we do. And I tell you what, it's an option. It's an option.
Right.
So we explore those. But the best part of that program, Sarah, is we then have recruited a small army of adult Latinos. And they sit down at a table like this with 6 to 8 high school kids. Sometimes the conversation is in Spanish. And what that adult talks about is their pathway from high school to where they are today.
Right.
That path may not be straight. And in fact, those pathways that are crooked, took U-turns, are some of the best stories for young people, because they look at us and they say, wow, I mean, he or she has it made. Well, you know what? It just didn't happen that way.
Right.
And I love those stories and those kids. I know, because I asked the guidance counselors, what did the kids talk about on the way home on the bus? They were, we talked to so-and-so and blah, 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 and they told me this and that, and did you know that, he or she, it was the fact that life is challenging, but somehow you can make it.
Well, it's the idea of having hope and seeing there's opportunity.
And the will. Are you willing to work
to do the work
for what you want to be?
Exactly. But now also, in the Latino community, there's also this very big issue in the fear with immigration and with DACA.
Yeah.
And so, a lot of your students, and we were just talking about this before we started, about they may have done everything right and they get that high school degree and they're ready to go to college.
Yeah.
But because, DACA, where they are, the ones that it's the deferred action for childhood arrivals.
Right.
So these are the children who are brought here as children to the U.S. and so they're not legal.
Yeah.
And how do they approach their futures? And that's something that is, let alone the immigration issues that children have of Hispanic and Latino, of their parents, maybe they're coming home and their parents may not be there, but they themselves have faced this issue. And how do you, you're not a federal organization,
No.
so you have no issues of if they're legal, not legal, so to help them. But how do you face and how do you find dealing with, especially with the anti-immigrant rhetoric and the support for these children didn't come here on their own? How do you deal and help them with dealing with DACA and then looking to which pathway they should go? Like, I don't know, you can't go into the military, can you, if you're?
No.
No, okay.
So, to me, my greatest disappointment with both political parties has been their inability to come to a resolution on this issue. I don't think it's practical for this country to deport the estimated 11 million illegal individuals from this country.
Right.
First of all, as the Wall Street Journal, a fairly Republican conservative newspaper, has argued time and again, we need these people to grow our economy. And
well,
so,
it's the fastest growing population. They are the ones, when you look at, we're in a state now, this country we're in a population decline. It's the first time in the history we are not replacing our population. And so we need, if we want growth and we want a youth, demographic, this is where we have to look to.
And what you generally find are Latinos working at the jobs that feed us. They work the fields,
right.
The vegetable and fruit fields, gardens and orchards and vineyards. They work in our slaughterhouses. These are jobs that Americans don't want.
Right.
They generally, what you hear from employers is that the work ethic among Latino workers is incredibly strong, and so it's disappointing from that big picture perspective that there hasn't been a political resolution to keep these people and to make them feel comfortable about being here, because so many of these students live in the shadows, are afraid to go out.
Right.
They don't know when somebody's going to be there to pick them up and deport them. So they lead very careful lives. Now, I will tell you that the students who are DACA are great kids. I mean, they for many of them came here when they were very little. This is the only country they know.
Right.
They don't know the Mexican national anthem.
Right. Some of them, their Spanish isn't even that great.
No, it isn't. They are Americans. They see themselves as Americans, and sometimes, and I've heard these stories from them, is that they really don't know the fact that they are not eligible to attend college as any other American can until they're in high school. And sometimes it's a crushing acknowledgement of why they can't have a driver's license and why they can't have a job and why they can't apply for that scholarship. And so DACA has been that ability to provide some temporary immunity from deportation,
right,
and has allowed them to get a driver's license, Social Security card, and has allowed them to move forward.
So they could have a work permit too.
So,
right.
And a work permit. So that's all good, but now the conversations we hear from Washington these days are, well, we're going to put an end to it. Well, come on, let's resolve this, because the negative factor about that hanging over so many shoulders is that, let's say you're not highly motivated, and you believe that someday I'm going to have to go back home,
right,
to my parents' home or to my grandparents' country, whether that's Mexico or Central America or South America. Why stay in high school?
Right.
So there's no incentive for them to stay in high school, so they drop out.
Right. Even though you could show them that if you have if you don't have a high school diploma, you're leaving in your entire work life close to $1 million on the table, and if you don't then graduate from college, it's another million. But that's so far off from them, and they don't see, they don't have the hope or they realize that there's really an opportunity for them.
So our argument, our perspective is with most students is, keep trying your hardest, keep doing your best. We hope that someday, you have to be optimistic, you have to be hopeful that there will be a resolution that will be satisfactory to you. And it may include, some penalty, some financial payment, whatever it is.
Right.
Let us know, what is it that I need to do to stay in this country? Let's figure this out.
Right.
So it's a tough argument, but we've worked with so many students who are DACA, or what we call international students, in addition to all of those students who are born here and trying to figure out what they need to do as well.
Because let's just talk about that. Not even the students, the Latinos and Hispanics who are here illegal, but let's talk about even if you were born here.
Right.
When we're in a period of time now where we're really looking at diversity and inclusion, let's really also look at the fact that there is no doubt that Hispanics and Latinos face significant discrimination, not only because of their skin color, their language skills, their income, and their education levels. And they too, just like African Americans and blacks, they don't fully share in the benefits that are afforded other members of the broader community. Look at, what they talk about is, first of all, if they're undocumented, they face more discrimination and they have fewer legal protections for it. When you just even look at, when you think about, when you're talking about employment, the types of jobs that they do, but they're also more likely to have wage theft or the threat of deportation. They're more likely to hold the low-paying jobs, or even in this time of COVID, they really are the essential workers, but they don't have health insurance and unemployment even. So housing, they are discriminated against in terms of where they live, the areas that you're talking about with the schools, less home ownership, right? They have higher poverty rates. They have fewer grocery scores. So now let's talk about the real area where is education. They are the second largest group of students in schools, but they are absolutely underrepresented in placement in advanced classes and college attendance. Only 18% of Indiana residents who are Hispanic hold a post-secondary degree.
I got to tell you a story about a young man that I helped last week, and it goes back to one of the issues you cited, and I think it's one of the most significant barriers in some occasions, and that is language. So Emiliano Cabrera, he's a real person. He is a freshman at Butler University. We exchanged a couple of text messages along with his counselor, Helen Tobo from Wayne High School. Emiliano was the 2020 salutatorian at Wayne High School, was awarded several significant scholarships. He's an American citizen.
Okay.
And started waffling about what he was going to do, and asked if I could go down to the university with him, and discovered that his mother spoke very little English.
Okay.
And Emiliano wanted somebody there with him to navigate the process. And I will tell you that in the year of COVID, it is something getting admitted into college. So we drive down to Butler.
Okay.
We go to Butler Fieldhouse. He has to take a test to make sure he doesn't have the virus.
Right.
He has to go back, wait for the test results. He has to now get admitted. We all have our temperatures taken, right?
Right.
They scan us. We're all healthy. He has to go to another location to get his housing papers. They discover he doesn't have his student ID. We have to go find, another place
Right.
on campus to get his ID. We go to his dorm. It was an all-day affair. His mother was there, but had I not been there, it would have been a very difficult day.
Right.
So that was just one day in the life of a very talented young man, and that day is played over and over again when people, well-intentioned, are trying to figure out how to navigate the system in English.
Right.
English.
And also, but even with Latino and Hispanic students is the issue that if they are, in most cases, the first generation in their family to go to college.
Right.
And so they're saying that they have two negatives against them in a sense. They're low income,
Right.
impoverished, and they're the first generation. So when they go to college, they don't have the parent who knows how to help the kids
Right.
sort of think about what courses they should take, or not to front load, you don't want to take 5 writing classes. And they don't know, they can't help them with the social isolation.
Yeah.
So they are more than likely to drop out, even if they get to college.
Yeah. So, again, what does Latinos Count do for a young man like Emiliano? I will tell you. Knowing the fact that he didn't have that family support structure there,
Right.
one of the things that we were able to do was to pair him up with a young man, Latino, Dr. Kevin Leffers, who's an orthopedic surgeon. Kevin, I think, is 39 years old, and had invited Emiliano to shadow him a couple of times. And Emiliano was in surgery looking over Dr. Leffers' shoulder, or wherever they stand you. But here was someone that we were able to identify to pair with Emiliano to help him understand, do you really want to be a neurosurgeon? Here's the number of years you're going to have to be in school,
Right.
the commitment you're going to have to make, the schedule you're going to have to live. And after listening and watching and experiencing that, Emiliano said, yeah, I think that's what I want to do. So, it's another role that we play in trying to help people in the community that can be a part of that young person's
Right.
life if they don't have that structure and support system at home.
Or it's the same issue that they talk about, in the African American and Black community, is you want to see people like you
Yeah.
in jobs
Right.
and positions. So they need to see Hispanics who can accomplish and be a neurosurgeon, so that they feel like it's someone like me. And so on college campuses, especially now with so much of the racism and anti-immigration rhetoric and hatred that's going on, they need more of those groups or a resource to help them.
Here's another story, and here's another barrier, and it's still prevalent, unfortunately, in Hispanic households, and that is that bias of not sending your daughter to college, right? Because you are going to get married and you're going to have babies. And that is probably the belief of Papa, of Daddy, who doesn't see the value in sending you to college.
Right.
That was the story that Zaida Ortiz tells at our conference. She's now in her mid-30s. She was not allowed to go to college. Finally, and I don't know all the circumstances or don't want to tell you all the circumstances, but at the age of 28, she decided, I am going to college and I am going to be a registered nurse, and that's exactly what she did. So her story to young people was, do not abandon, do not give up your dream because you can attain it.
Right.
If you're willing to undergo, some issues in your family structure in your life and who you have around you, you can still do it. So it's important, and it's unfortunate, that there is that bias still in families of not supporting your daughter and her wish to go to college.
Right, the cultural expectations.
Exactly.
So like with Hispanic men, they're socialized to be providers, so they may feel the pressure to drop out and they have to work to support. And then women as the caregivers, and so they find themselves between those demands. But there's another big issue that young Latina women face, which is that it's, according to the CDC, even though since 1991, the U.S. has seen a 63% decrease in teen birth rates, and from 1991, teen birth rates was at 38.6%, and by 2012, it dropped to 14.1%. But the girls who have become pregnant have a higher propensity for dropping out of high school and not going to college. And the problem, though, is that in 2017, of the number of teen girls who got pregnant, 28.9% are Hispanic. So I mean, and even though they're 28.9%, and non-Hispanic Black African Americans are 27.5%, they are 2 times higher than the rate of non-Hispanic white teens, which is at 3.2%, to get pregnant. And they still have, Hispanics still have the highest rate of teenage pregnancy. And I mean, they say there are lots of factors to why they become pregnant, which is one, the cultural and religious, but also goes to that idea that they don't have access to medical services, they don't have the financial resources, they don't, so they have a lot, that they're facing in that cultural, institution that they build into, and that's in their families.
Well, two things, with that situation, and it is an unfortunate one because it's so hard for parents to go to college, but it's not impossible. And I know of a young woman who was a recipient of one of our Viva College scholarships who had a child, had to stop going to college, but it was just really when her baby was born and still an infant.
Right.
But she went back. And one of the things that we've done is that we've now instituted and set aside one of our scholarships for parents, single parents who are going to school and just need a little extra help.
So the Viva College scholarships, so
correct.
That's part of what Latino Counts offers. And now, how do you raise money, and how does Latino Counts get the funds?
Well, we have had a scholarship breakfast and raised most of the money that way through sponsors and donors. This year, it's going to be a little bit more challenging because we had to cancel our breakfast, so we're doing something different. But we continue to plan on awarding 15 $1,000 scholarships next year for 2021, and so we really think it's important that Latinos are able to at least look to us for that type of support, because a number of the students out there who understand the fact that it's not just one scholarship that's going to help me in college, but multiple ones, are very good about that. One of the things that we did last year and are doing again this year is that as we become aware of more and more set-aside scholarships for minority students, is that we're now offering essay writing workshops for students to really be in a good position to talk about themselves and then address the questions that have been posed to them. Because, as you know, because you write and write so well, is that you really need to work on your story
Right.
if you want to be seriously considered for a college scholarship.
Yeah. And also now, because of the age of COVID and because schools are not necessarily taking standardized test scores,
Right.
so the college essays and recommendations are going to become even more important for kids to use to tell their story.
So that's one of our new activities this year, and in fact, what we're doing, and I feel really good about it, and our board feels really good about it, is that we are releasing our scholarship application earlier, and before the end of the calendar year, we are going to conduct our essay writing workshops for students.
Yeah, so that they'll have time. But
Right.
what else? A lot of minority students and students from low-income families don't realize is that there is actually sometimes more money for them at the more selective or private universities that want to ensure they have a diverse
Right.
student body than they would realize. But there's still the issue that only 15% of Hispanics attend one of the 500 most selective colleges, where it is proven that graduation is at its highest levels.
Yeah.
So I mean, but there is money. I mean, they just,
There is.
like you said, and they just have to figure out where it's from and where the resources are.
The three pillars of our organization are preparation, awareness, leadership. I'm telling young people, Black, Asian, Latino, there's never been a better time to be a minority student, simply because of all that has happened in this country with George Floyd and the other shootings and protests, is that now companies are understanding that they need to really take a look at themselves and to figure out, where do we stand? And so many companies that get it are doubling down their effort to diversity, equity, and inclusion. And so I'm telling our students, look, there's opportunity out there now more than ever before.
Right.
Are you willing to put in the effort? Because I can't do it for you. You have to do it.
Right.
And we can provide you that support. But you're going to have to step forward. You're going to have to barrel down and get to it. Because it really is an opportunity time for minority students.
So, I mean, obviously, there's no debate that the ability to get an education is, the one thing that can help you get out of poverty. And so, and although, so I want to talk to you about the Fort Wayne Community Schools, because, like you said, you're in they're almost your 40th year. And before we go into the current crisis that education and learning is facing with COVID, I just want to talk to you a little bit more about the philosophical about what is the role of education, and the idea of, this is a personal kind of get on my soapbox about vocational, being educated, not either vocationally, but also because you need to be a knowledgeable, well-educated person so you can participate in our community and society.
Right.
So how do you think about the role that education plays, especially public education? Where do you think your role, and how does that approach with your sitting on the board?
I think you voiced it. It's especially to help you prepare for your civic role, civic engagement, but then it's also personal self-fulfillment, and then economic self-sufficiency for you and your family. And to me, those really are the cornerstones for what education is all about. How do you become a better person? And I think that's the primary role, and it's a difficult role these days with everything that's happening in the world. The fact that we've got seems to be these polar extremes in philosophies. The fact that we've got this pandemic, running through our country, and then we have this assault on public education.
Right.
And so you've got, all of these issues coming together to really challenge educators and education. And you know, I admire anyone who is in a building that teaches or is an administrator, because they're tough jobs. And yet when you talk to people who teach, they, you know, they believe sincerely what they're doing. They are really noble people.
So let's take a look directly at the Fort Wayne Community Schools. So you have nearly 30,000 students.
Right.
It's one of the largest school districts in Indiana. There are 50 schools in the district, and they're spoken in 75 different languages, right?
Right.
So your student demographics are 40% are white, 25% are Black and African American, and 19% are Hispanic. The actual graduation rate for high school for Fort Wayne Community Schools is 86.4%.
It's pretty good.
Which is higher than the national high school graduation rate. And you also allow students can attend any school in the district if there is room. So let's talk a little bit about that.
Based on race and space, if there is that, because we couple of years ago, more than a couple of years ago, agreed that we would racially balance all of our schools.
Okay.
And so that there had to be a range of, I think it was between 15 and 40%, because we thought that was important then and still today.
Okay.
So yeah, but aside from that, if there is a program, if you want to attend the math and science STEM elementary school at Irwin,
right.
You know, if there is space available and will not upset that racial profile, that balance there, you can get in. Or if you want to go to the magnet school programs at Weiser Park, you know, you can go there. So there are lots of choices: magnet schools, magnet programs, schools that focus on other areas as well.
Right. And you also have 2 early learning centers,
right.
the pre-K.
Bunch and Whitney Young.
Right, and then you have the International Baccalaureate program, and then you have the New Tech Academy for middle school. So, I mean, but
middle and high school.
Middle and high school.
Tolles is the middle school, and then at Wayne we've got the New Tech program as well. Yeah.
So, I mean, but there is so many issues facing education. You know, from this whole issue of pay for teachers. I mean, the average public school teacher salary as of July this year in Fort Wayne is $54,365. The range is between 47 and 63. So the average national, according to the National Education Association, is 60,000. So clearly, we are below what the national average is for teachers. So there is this issue of performance, you know, should we have performance pay or not? There's the issue of the state and federal funding for public schools. And then one of the issues, like I want to touch on a little bit, is this idea about charter schools. Because there's the idea there's magnet schools, which are public schools, but they have a specialty in a certain, like the arts or sciences. And then you have school choice, which is this idea that in a school district like Fort Wayne Community Schools, if it works within the numbers, you can choose which school your child goes to. But there's this issue also about charter schools and the problems that those cause for public schools. And let's just talk a little bit about that, because I don't think that public schools fundamentally have issues with charter schools. I think it has to do more with the funding issue of it. Is that true?
Part of it is. I think funding is one, but the other issue is regulation. And in my opinion, the lack of regulation with charter schools. And so, you know, what we see so often, not often, but on a regular basis, are parents who are upset with their performance of their children in a Fort Wayne school, let's say. And so they are lured to a charter school because they're going to do all these other things for them. And what they find out in a number of instances is that their students are getting better grades, but simply because their grades have been inflated.
Well, because grading in some ways is subjective.
So they, you know, what they find out is that they have now they find out they've fallen behind their neighbors who elected to stay in one of our schools. And so, they were romanced away, and they, were led to believe that all of these A's and A pluses that my son or daughter were getting were earned, and the instruction was rigorous, and then they find out it's not. And and how can I say that? Well, I know, because I know so many of the folks in that charter school system, and I don't want to blame everybody, but I just don't think that the training and support for those teachers is as strong and as rigorous as what we do.
So why is it that we don't hold because there is an argument that there's so much emphasis on the metrics and testing of students.
Yeah.
So, I think some would argue that we've gone a little too far in that area. But why aren't charter schools?
Well, because the Indiana General Assembly has allowed really this two-tiered system to exist, because they are so swept up in this anti-public education move that they will do anything to allow this second school, this second publicly funded system to come up.
Because don't they hold religious schools and private schools to the same standards as public schools?
They do, but you don't see that in charter schools, and sometimes charter schools get away with not taking the same tests that some public school students do. And I'll tell you what, we have in Allen County, I think, some great parochial schools. We have some great options. We have Lourdes, we have Concordia, we have Bishop Dwenger, we have Blackhawk Christian, we have private schools. We have great schools, but then we have this secondary level of charter schools. Charter school operators, charter schools have found out that if they do poorly with one operator, they can find another authorizer.
Or they just change the name.
I call them the zombie charter schools, because you can't kill them. Even though they are poorly performing, they find a way to keep living. And I think that's wrong, and it's really something that taxpayers should be upset about. That these schools are allowed to perform at such a low level, and yet they continue to stay in business.
And so let's just talk a little bit about that. The Fort Wayne Community Schools has just hired a new superintendent, Dr. Mark Daniel. And what I'm curious about is, what did the school board sort of consider when looking for a new superintendent? Because what's happening with schools, clearly, with COVID, nobody knows what's going to happen, but what the demands, because for students, we don't even know what jobs and vocations there's going to be in the future. We don't know how technology and artificial intelligence is going to be impacting this issue that clearly is going to become more and more about these vouchers and chart. What did the board look for? What did you feel were the critical skills?
Well, first of all, one of the things that we understood was that we're a pretty good school system, and Dr. Robinson left in place an infrastructure that was pretty sound and a darn good administrative team. What we found, what attracted me, and I believe other board members, to offering Dr. Mark Daniel the position, was his ability to think outside the box. He attended the Disney school that encourages people to be creative.
He went to the Institute.
He went to the
Imagineering,
Institute,
where they talk about it's all about how to be creative, but leadership and customer service, and it's supposed to be a fabulous place.
And I think those attributes in a large institution are very, very helpful, especially with all of the challenges that have come up. You really have to be creative, and you can't rely on the approaches that have been tried before, tried in other districts. You have to really think about, how do we do this differently? I really liked that. He's at the same time been very respectful of his administrative team. But I will give you one other example of what I really like about Mark, and that is just the other day, as a mother with 3 kids, and she's decided to keep them at home, sent me a note and just said, "This is tiring. This is challenging. I have no life. I'm trying to figure out when I can go to the grocery store, when I can do errands." She said, "Help me, because my 3 children are on 3 different schedules." And she, at the same time, very reasonable mom, very appreciative of what we've done, but was looking for a solution. I sent that right to the superintendent, and within a couple of hours, he said, "Keep these coming, because we need to figure this out."
Right.
We are, this is all new.
Right.
And so he's looking at the fact that we have to find solutions to issues that we've never dealt before.
Right.
And I really like that about him, is that, he wants to figure it out, that if it's not working, I need to know about that.
Right. So that he's sort of questioning it and not doing it just because that's the way it's always
Right.
been done. Yeah.
Right.
Well, at the end of each And Good Company show, I do something that's always the way it's been done, is that I ask guests the same 12 questions that French novelist Marcel Proust popularized from a Victorian parlor game. And Proust believed that in answering these questions, a person reveals his or her true nature. So, what is your favorite word?
Great.
What's your least favorite word?
Pivot. I can't stand that. Everybody is pivoting these days. What is this pivot stuff? There used to be a different word that people would use, but now everybody is pivoting.
Right. Well, they're trying to reassess, reinvent, What turns you on creatively, spiritually, or emotionally?
Videos, moving videos. The picture, well-told stories.
So storytelling with visuals?
Yeah.
What turns you off creatively, spiritually, or emotionally?
PowerPoint presentations.
Amen.
In fact, when I facilitate and I get to moderate panel discussions, I tell the presenters no slides.
Right.
And they're like, "What?" I mean, this is like their security blanket. I said,
Yeah.
No slides. We are going to do what we did today. We're going to have a conversation.
Right.
And I had a woman at a conference, and after the conversation, she said, "That was okay."
Yeah. That's what people tell me after this. They're all nervous, and then they realize. What sound or noise do you love?
What sound or noise do
you
I
love?
Love?
Mm-hmm.
A crowd cheering at a baseball game.
And it would be a Cubs game.
It would be a Cub game.
And they would be winning.
Usually,
right?
yes.
Okay. What sound or noise do you hate?
A car coming up from behind me when I'm
when
on
you're
my
on a bike, right?
Yes.
What profession other than your own would you like to attempt?
I wish I could paint. I wish I could paint. I have no talent for that, and have great appreciation for artists.
What profession would you not like to do?
Teach.
But you're on the school board.
I've been invited to do, a guest session in a classroom.
Uh-huh.
And it's, teaching to me is like performing 5 or 6 times in a day.
Yeah, it's tough.
It is tough, and my hat is off to every teacher.
And you're performing to a non-receptive audience.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. What do you consider your greatest achievement?
Boy, I will tell you this. Serving as executive director of Latinos Count is the most rewarding job I've had in my life. It is. I really enjoy working with young Latino students.
Mm-hmm. Who, living or dead, would you most like to have a conversation with?
Wow. I lost a sister when she was young, and her, Evelyn Rose.
Evelyn
Yeah.
Rose.
Yeah.
How would you like to die?
Ooh. Oh, I know exactly how I want to die.
Okay.
I want to go the way my dog did. You take me to the vet, and you put that needle in my arm. Somebody's holding me and hugging me, and I'm gone in a minute. I've just been around too many people, at the end of life, and it's ugly.
Yeah.
It is ugly and painful, and I just don't know why we allow humans to go that way. Yeah, take me to the vet.
Okay. If heaven exists, what would you like to hear God say when you arrive at the pearly gates?
You got box seats.
And maybe he'll give the Cubs a World Series or
That's
two?
it. Yeah, just put me in a front row at a stadium.
Well, thank you very much, Steve. I think we didn't even touch the surface, but I really appreciate you taking the time to have a conversation with me.
It was good.
Yeah.
Enjoyed it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And please join me again next time when you can again enjoy a seat at the table for great conversation and good company.